We never received our payment last night.
What do you mean?
You're making a mistake.
The money never made it to the job site.
I need my money as soon as possible.
I love this kind of energy in movies, and it's like super fast. It's kind of the British way of tell the gangster stories. And yeah, because I'm a Guy Ritchie fan, I'm a Matthew Vaughn fan, now I'm a Jon Keeyes fan, and I wonder, how do you create this energy? It's based on script, it's based on the editing. When did you create the energy?
And I think it was an organic progression from the first time I got the script. Matthew's script was already high energy. It was a very tight script. The pace kept going, kept moving really quickly. And then once my director of photography and I, Austin Schmidt and I, we got our hands on it and we started kind of really digging into it. We kept just kind of turning the screws. How can we just keep this thing constantly moving? We don't want anybody to relax. We want everybody to be kind of leaning into it and feeling the energy and the adrenaline of this whole thing. It was a comedy first and foremost, and comedy is about energy. So much of that. So we knew we needed to keep the energy alive, because comedy is, the pacing of comedy is really important. And so we wanted to keep that pacing going. And then sort of with that, it was developing, action sequences that in a visual style that could complement that and keep it going. Because, Austin and I have done a lot of just straightforward action movies before. And so with this one, we wanted to do something different and keep every action sequence, unique and individual. So it was a whole combination of all of us just constantly driving each other forward, coming up ways just to kind of keep. And then the actors energy and the actors pacing. Antonio, he's a bundle of energy. We've done 3 movies together, and he had so much fun, and he was constantly dancing and clapping and playing and coming up with ways just to keep that energy going. Everybody was that way. It was one of the most fun sets I've actually ever been on, was making this.
That was my next question, because you have a all-star crew. You have Antonio Banderas, you have Melissa Leo, you have Jonathan Rhys Meyers. Like, working with these people and creating this energy, how coachable are these actors from you? Because you have your vision. So they're part of your vision.
Yeah, no, 100%. And Antonio, this was my 3rd time directing Antonio. So we already had, we had a relationship and a rapport, and we spent a lot of time talking about this one, and what some of his approaches were and what he wanted to do with like the little pencil mustache and the suits and the colors, and Antonio's he's just naturally just a very giving, very friendly, very approachable person, and then he just loves to have fun. And even like the movies we've done where we were more straightforward action and more dramatic and more heavier, in between takes, he's still a very lighthearted person. So being able to work with him on that. Melissa playing Siobhan, I had known Melissa from a movie I produced, but I hadn't directed her. But I was just reading Siobhan on the paper and was like, man, just that wit and that sharp tongue and that sarcasm. Yeah, I'm like, Melissa is so right for this. And so Melissa and I spent quite a while talking about it, knowing that I wanted Siobhan to sort of ground the comedy. Even though she was funny herself, she provided a lot of comedy for the others to play off of. So I knew I needed her. Jonathan was the fun one. Jonathan was the really interesting one. And, Jonathan, once again, I've done a few movies with Jonathan, and he, as he likes to say, I'm not funny. He's like, I'm not funny. I'm not a comedian. I don't know why you want me to make a comedy with you. And I'm like, because Jonathan, you're a brilliant actor. And you got great timing, and just trust me and trust us, that you can be funny in this and not be seen like you've been seen before. And so we spent a lot of time working. And he came in very early on, and we worked on the character, and we tried out some stuff. And then he came back to actually shoot the movie. And we put it in, we gave him an ability to start with the heavier dramatic stuff and then start ramping into the pieces where his character has to do the comedy. And we'd end the whole series of stuff, and he's like, I don't know if it's funny, but I'm going to trust you. And he'd walk away. And I thought he was brilliant. I thought he did a great job with it.
Because when you say funny, it's interesting for me because there's a thin line between being funny and use violence as funny, because
right.
there is violence from the beginning. And that's two things that I like about it, because from the beginning we know who is Antonio Banderas' character. Just in a few lines, we know what capable he is to do things and when he wants to things being done. But then we start seeing shootings, like crazy shootings, like turn up the light shooting, like dodge bull shooting. Like it's like a whole new universe that you create inside of this. What is your definition as an artist, as a director, as a creator, of using violence in movies or in art in general?
There's different. I started as a horror director. So my first movie was a serial killer movie. And then, art imitates life. I've got, I came up, I had a lot of violent stuff happen younger growing up. That was a part of what influenced me as a filmmaker. And some of that reality I like to carry into movies. I think that there is a place for violence in entertainment, depending on what that violence is and what's being taken from it. The thing that I find interesting about comedy violence is it's one of the few times, depending on how you handle it, it's one of those few times when you can become gratuitous with violence. Or at least I can say we can, but I can't, where I feel like I'm comfortable becoming gratuitous with violence because I'm not trying to make the violence real. I'm not trying to, we already know in a comedy that we're sitting back watching a farce and something zany and something that's not real. So you can then play with that violence at a completely different level because the emotional impact of it and the meaning of it's very, very different. And so it was very freeing in this movie to do a lot of things. Now, the comedy versus the violence and when do we go too far in the story terms, that was something that we always had to kind of ride that thin line of and decide, are we pushing something too far and trying to force it to be funny when it's not? Or are we just allowing the natural progression of these people believing that they're right and believing that they're doing the right thing, but they don't have the tools to actually figure out how to do it correctly. And that's what makes them inherently funny. And that's why their level of type of violence becomes funny for me.
Because going back to the 90s, and I was thinking about Commando, and when you see these characters doing action movies, they also are funny. The way they kill people, the way they say lines, they stays forever, like I'll be back, or we need a bigger boat. At the end, it's kind of corny and it's funny, but obviously, I grew up in the 90s. I was younger, and for me, it was fun. Then you start getting to know more movies, you get into different directors, and then when you listen to them talking about how this movie inspired them, because they were exposure to violence, like Martin Scorsese has said many times. Many directors have talked about Tarantino used violence as a reflection of whatever he going to his mind. And I always found interesting, even in horror movies, in gore movies, what violence means. The using of blood for entertainment. And but now there's a fine line in your movie, because for me, it's super funny, the shooting, for example. Like, turn off the light. Let's kill everybody.
Right.
And it's just like a surreal. Like, it's like a gangster world that could be surreal. Like these two people, Antonio Banderas and the other actor, that they're just standing and people killing each other behind them. and say like, what? Like it's kind of Star Wars. You never get me. And how do you expect that audience is going to react to your movie, to your exposure of being funny? Because you say something interesting. You come from horror movie. That was your first inspiration, and I see a lot of horror things. Because when you turn off the light and you don't know what's gonna happen, it's like you just let yourself go to whatever is coming, and you're never ready for it.
Right, right. Well, I mean, and it's interesting. Like even when I started off, and horror was what I became known for 25 years ago. Before, and I've graduated away from that for lots of different reasons. But they always talk about horror and comedy. They're very similar to each other because they're all
Sam
about
Raimi.
timing.
I love Sam Raimi because Sam Raimi makes those things, and it's wonderful.
Exactly. No, and Sam is a great example of the ability to tie horror and comedy together, and it's funny is when I make a movie, I've learned over all of these years that all I can do is try to make a movie that I want to see and that I hope everybody else wants to see at the same time. And so, for me, I'd done comedy in some commercial work. I'd done comedy in some short film work. I've had movies that had comedy touch in them, but I haven't really done a comedy in this, in this way. And Matthew, the writer, he's in his early 20s, which is great. He's got the pulse of his generation, which is fantastic. And it's a fresh type of comedy where you hear a lot of directors talk about you get on set and the actors are just ripping. They're coming up with something new on every single take and stuff. And whereas I actually read Matthew's script, I'm like, my God, I'm just laughing here as I'm reading your script. And I give somebody the script to read across the room in the office, and suddenly they're laughing. I'm hearing them just laughing over in their corner as they're reading Matthew's words. So it's funny is because comedy is so subjective, but I felt like with this one, it wasn't as subjective because it became so universally like things that we all can relate to about people just wanting to be better than who they are, but not knowing how to do it, and then making fools of ourselves trying to get there and figure that out. And it's such a universal feeling.
Because it's also a movie about friendship. It's about the things that you are able to do for your friends. And I know these people are kind of anti-heroes, they're kind of anti-heroes, but at the end, we're enjoying like other people's life when we watch a movie. I don't think it's hard to do not sit and watch movies and do not take a part, even if it's a villain part. But at the end, it's just so weird because these guys are criminals, but they're also friends. And everything in the end is about friendship. And for me, it was like, wait, what?
How far will you go for your friends, and how much will you stick your neck out for your friends? Is really what it boils down to. And like, I mean, I knew that. I mean, all the way back to like my kid, being a kid, my friends and I getting in trouble after school when, before we had to go home for dinner, and high school and all those things. I mean, we got into so much trouble doing all the wrong things for all the right reasons.
That's the definition of your movie. It's being a kid. It's a group of kids knowing that they're doing something wrong, but they stick together because they have a goal in mind. And at the end, it's friendship.
That's exactly it.
It's friendship.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Like, that's what I think I love. Like, at the end, I'm watching these people like, okay, but like, these people go after to clean things.
I know. Without giving away the ending, it was funny when we shot the ending and what sort of happens there, as the closure of the movie. And all of us were like, I think this is funny. I really want this to be funny, but they're also criminals.
Yeah, exactly.
And so,
and I was rooting.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, and I wanted to be, it's like what I really wanted out of the ending, once again, without giving it away, is for people to want to know, okay, what next? What's going to happen after this? Because they're still, in a way, they're still hot water. that they've got to that some of them are in, and so they got to figure that out.
I agree. I totally agree with you. It's like a group of kids trying to do something and just expecting the best for them, even if they're doing something wrong.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. Because that really is. I mean, even Melissa and Sven as Chuck and Siobhan, I mean, they were there early and they went out and spent, because that relationship is so unique in that movie. And they went out and spent like 2 or 3 days just wandering around Dublin and Ireland, and as Siobhan and Chuck, making up stories about who they were and where they were from, and playing off of each other in circumstances to build that level of friendship. Because I mean, Chuck's the loosest cannon of all of them, but Siobhan would do anything, obviously, for him. And so just the dynamics of all of these relationships are so wacky, but I get it. I totally get it.
You, as a creator, as a producer, as a director, as a writer, how do you feel, how do you expect that we have like simultaneously, I'll say, premieres online and in the theaters? How do you feel about this? Do you want people watch your movie at the theaters, or do you want them to watch them at home? I know it's a different reaction because I have lived both.
Right.
This is the kind of movie that you have to watch at the theater so you can discuss afterwards.
No, exactly. And I think it goes back to, and I've similar questions before, but I think about Burt Reynolds' character in Boogie Nights, when shooting on film, and then he resisted the whole video generation, and then his empire becomes toppled because he refused to change. And I kind of feel like that, like, granted, like at my age and the way I grew up, I want people to go see these movies in theaters, and I want my movie to premiere in a theater, and I do, and they happen, some have and some haven't. But I'm also try to remember my age, my generation. I try to remember the business side of the movie business, which is, it's the majority of the audiences are in their 20s. And they're gonna, we got a couple of generations around me that have their way of watching movies have changed, and I would rather be on the train that continues to give them access to my movies than be the person who's preventing and tightening my own little world of who can see my movie. So I've got the mixed blessings thing, but at the end of the day, if my movie gets seen on whatever platform that is, however that comes about, that's what matters to me ultimately, is somebody gets to see my movie and hopefully they enjoy it.
I'm a romantic. The thing is, I'm a romantic. For me, it's since I'm a kid. Yeah, because for me, movies are magic. If I tell you that I thought that it was real life people that I was watching, and people that really die when they killed them in the movies, it's all about the magic of watching a movie on the theaters, and then telling people to go and watch them. And
right.
I don't know, probably still romantic after so many years. So
I do have the romantic notion. Don't get me wrong.
I know, because you're a creator. When you start writing something from an empty page, your vision as a creator is that to reach as many people possible, and
exactly.
and that your work create conversation, basically.
Yeah.
This is you created this. You create this interaction, because without your movie, I would never met you. It's about creating and the people talk about reactions. But
and I think that's one of the reasons why movies are so popular, is because you can start a conversation with anybody and you can talk about movies, and there's a universal language that somebody's going to know the same movie, somebody's going to have a particular genre they like. There's always conversation that can be had around movies, and you want that thing to, we bond as a society through art. And what's the most prolific art right now? But it's movies and music.
Jon, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Congratulations. I think it's a fun movie. I think and I hope
you're welcome.
It's a great cast. They have great energy. Antonio Banderas forced that accent like mine. They sound so scary but funny. Melissa Leo, she talks so fast. Jonathan Rhys is always the bad luck walking. Ekaterina, it's a really great twist. I think it's a really great chemistry. It's a really good mixture of situations.
Good. Thanks. So I do too. I really think people are going to enjoy this one. I'm looking forward to seeing how people start reacting to it.
Duck.
There's no going home now. Who sold us out?
I sold no one out.
Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are.
Things are about to get so much worse.
Wait! Who are you people?
Weather cleaners.